When did you call order? 7:30.
Yes, please call the meeting to order.
7:33. Okay. Good.
All righty. So I apologize. I don't remember. I know that we need to talk about our finance letter. What else do we need to address tonight, June?
I sent out a bunch of
Julie.
minutes.
Oh,
for
minutes,
us,
yes.
and we have a bunch of people in the audience. Was that because we were going to go over we were waiting for June on the CPA money?
It's in the audience.
Sorry, what? Oh, Scott's in the audience. Thank you.
Well, I think there's some concerns from some folks. I know that would be some of the audience. I don't know who's all in the audience.
Okay.
So the posted agenda, guys, is call to order, approve minutes, review and update budget recommendations if needed. Review and vote recommendations on ATM warrant articles, finalize annual report, any other business not anticipated.
All right, well, why don't we start with the minutes then?
Okay. So did anybody have any changes or corrections or questions around any of those?
So starting with the one from January 19th.
Mm-hmm.
Julie, could you possibly promote Margaret? She's the town of Berlin.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any concerns on these minutes? It was from the January 19th meeting, but it was the January 12th minutes from that meeting.
Oh, that was two sets.
I'm looking at the February ones. I think I looked at the other set too, but I can't see them now.
Well, there's
Guys,
one that's
if you didn't
there's
have
one
time
that's
to
labeled
read
draft.
them,
There's one labeled draft FinCom minutes 19 January and 26 January.
yeah.
Okay, in the body of that it says date January 19th.
Oh, yeah, I got it. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just saying that I don't know
Oh,
which.
okay, so I didn't make a mistake then on that one because I probably put the wrong date in. So let's pull those. I will double check the dates on that. Okay. Let me see. Let me see here. The ones I had were 2 February 15, 16, 16.
No,
I
it's
had
just that
19. It should be 19 January and 26 January.
Yeah, they're
It's
right.
just that on the 19th of January, we approved the minutes from the 12th. That was what was confusing me. I thought there's nothing wrong with your dates. That I was just looking.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Because I was trying to make sure I had them all the right ones.
Nope.
Okay.
So I need a motion.
I move to approve the minutes from the 19th of January and the 26th of January.
I'll second that.
Do we need any further discussion on these? Hearing none, roll call vote. Stan, aye.
Mary, aye.
Janet, I.
Julie, I.
Scott, aye.
And I move to approve the minutes for February 2nd, 16, 23.
Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. Any discussion on those? Hearing none, roll call vote. Stan, aye.
Mary, aye.
Janet, I.
Julie, I.
Scott, aye.
Okay, so that's it on minutes.
I sent out more, but we can do those later. you want.
Yeah,
No, I was just gonna do the other ones. I just didn't
Oh,
know.
I
how
only
much-
saw those two. I didn't see the other one.
Oh, okay,
we have November 16 and December 15 as well.
right.
And we also have some, well, we had also ones that I sent out for March.
Yep, I saw the March ones. It was the 23rd with all the approval of the meetings. That one looked all right to me. That was the first one I had looked at. Would be the March 23rd one.
So that's just last week.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'll move to accept March 23rd.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call votes. Dan, aye.
Mary, I.
Jan and I.
Julie, I.
Scott,
And
aye.
then if I'm not mistaken, Julie, the last ones we have to approve are November 16th and November 16th and December 15th. Is that correct?
Yeah.
So I move to approve November 16 and December 15.
I'll second that.
Any further discussion on those minutes? Hearing none, roll call votes. Dan, aye.
Mary, I.
Jan and I.
Julie, I.
Scott, aye.
All right.
Wait,
So
did we get them all done?
I think, let me just double check my.
I thought there
folder.
was one more we needed to
Because
do.
we forgot to do the ones I sent out. At last meeting, I don't think we did the ones I sent out for the 16th.
It was the 5th, right? I don't remember doing the 5th. January 5th meeting.
Let
did
me
we
see
meet
which,
January 5th?
Yeah,
Oh.
there's a whole, yep. It was the police, the night of the police and the market rate adjustment review and the discussion on the COVID test kits.
Okay.
I don't believe
just-
I don't believe we did those minutes, but I might be wrong.
I think
Well,
we
I'm
already did them because they're not in my
Okay.
folder of drafts.
All
And
right.
usually once they're uploaded, I take them out of the draft folder.
Okay.
But let me just double check. I had February 2nd, December 15th, February 16th, March 16th, November 16th, January 19th, February 23rd, March 23rd, January 26th, and then today.
Okay. So
So
we,
I
okay.
think we missed.
Yeah, I actually see on the January 12th minutes, they say we approved January 5th minutes. So
Okay.
those are all set.
Oh, yeah. No, now that you say that, Scott, I do remember seeing that.
It's confusing walking through this, but it's
I
it's all
know, I
there.
know, going back from forth. Okay. All right.
So
So,
So
but
we
last
did-
week, Julie, we just had the one from March 16th, and all those dates you just read included that one. But so we have approved the ones for March 16th?
well, March 16th, I sent it out before our meeting, but I don't think we approved it at our meeting last week.
No, we didn't.
That was one of the dates you just read, though.
Oh, it was one of the dates I just read, yeah, from my folder. So I sent that out. Did you guys get a chance to read it?
Yeah, it's one by itself. It doesn't have any other
Yeah,
dates
yes,
with
by
it.
itself, yeah.
Yeah, I read it and my notes, we didn't get to the vote on the minutes. On the 23rd, we needed to vote on the 16th. We never got to the vote on minutes. So
Yeah,
Oh, okay.
we've yet to vote those, the March
Okay.
16th minutes.
okay.
So I moved
So-
that we approve the March 16th minutes.
Have a second?
You're muted, Janet.
Janet's muted.
Second.
Thank you, Janet.
Any discussion on the minutes from March 16th? Hearing none, roll call vote, Stan, aye.
Mary, I.
Janet, I.
Julie, I.
Got I.
All right, now are we done with the minutes?
I hope so.
Me too. That's the housekeeping part of the meeting. Okay. So June, what else do we have on, do we have any other, or is Margaret is here? Hi, Margaret. Or is that you?
Hi.
With your picture of the town of Berlin. There you are. So do we have other warrant articles that we haven't approved? Or did we get through them all?
Mark, you're gotta
You're
unmute
on
there.
mute, though.
I'm sorry, I can just give you a quick update. I sent out the draft warrant and let you know what the select board did on Monday night. So the combined earthwork bylaw has been removed from the warrant. The article we
Right.
discussed last week on open space mitigation funds, that's been removed. And the board did approve inclusion of the general stabilization funding article. So I don't know, what else were you holding off on? I'm trying to think here.
I don't remember. I apologize. Was there
We
anything else,
skipped-
Scott?
Yeah, we were holding off Articles 22 through 24 for June's discussion with Tim Wheeler. Can we spend
Oh, right.
funds in current year for the revenue expected in the following year? That was the one part of the warrant that we didn't vote on. I think that was the only part, Stan.
Right, we did, yes, we did. There was basically a group of them and we took one but skipped others, right? Or took two and skipped others. So we
Yeah,
said we
um,
skipped 24 through 26.
No, 22 through 24 we skipped.
Can someone pull that up? I'm sorry.
But
I
if-
can't.
No,
I'm looking for it on my phone and
no,
it's
we voted on 24. 24 was our negative vote.
I think that was the numbering, the old numbering we had at the last meeting. The numbering I think has changed in the warrant. Am I wrong?
Oh, I'm looking at what Margaret
Yes.
just sent out.
Yes,
Can we-
I don't know, I'm
the
looking at what
board,
Margaret
the
just
board
sent
did
out.
the board did some renumbering. They grouped all the conservation articles together, so those
Right.
appear.
Can you bring that up, Margaret?
Yes, yeah, I'm going into my file now to get it.
Okay, so then I don't know which ones we skipped. What did we skip?
We skipped.
Mary,
one-
what Mary just said was what we did. There was some renumbering, so we might have had a little bit off. I think she's correct in what she just said.
Yeah, and I'm looking at,
Okay, I apologize. I got caught up in the renumbering business. I didn't hear what we said
Okay.
about what we actually skipped.
Okay, I'm gonna share my screen.
I think it was Articles 20 and 21 were the ones, the new numbered Articles 20, 21 were the ones we skipped.
Okay,
Okay,
Article 20, the new Article 20 is the actual budget, the fiscal year 23 budget.
Sorry, so it was 21 and
20
Oh, yeah,
was
okay.
the community preservation.
oh, yeah, CPA, yeah.
Appropriations, yeah. Which that
It
one there you
really
did not
wouldn't
take.
matter
in-
because isn't this what the select board redid the other night, Margaret? So you know what I mean? Didn't-
Yeah, select board didn't touch the content of this article. They just renumbered, they regrouped. They moved around a few articles.
It's going to be confusing with our minutes that we've already approved with these articles. So we're going to have to somehow straighten that out.
Yeah, you might have to title them.
Yeah.
So Stan, I don't know how you want to handle this. Article 21, I actually had time to pull out all my paperwork and relook at it. I have not yet been able to talk with Tim. I do have a scheduled phone call with him. I do see that he's here tonight. So I don't know if you want to have us talk about it now.
Well, sure, we can just promote him and talk about it now.
Because I don't seem to have I don't have any problems with the current Article 21 as far as the estimates go. My concern is on Article 20, current 22 and 23, because it's saying that it's being appropriated from the undesignated fund balance. And as of right now, there's only 4 cents in that.
Can we move it up so we can see it, June? I'm sorry, I'm only looking at half of 21.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's me.
Oh, sorry,
Give me
Margaret.
one sec. Give me one
That's
sec
all right.
here. Move it up.
There you
Oh, and
go.
look what I
Oh,
did. Look what I did. See, there we go. So
Nope.
you want to go down a little more? That's
Yep,
it?
there you go. That's the whole Article 21.
Okay. And I think Tim's mic is open, Stan.
I promoted him to panelist. I hope that he
Hello.
bounced. Hi,
Hey,
Tim.
Tim.
Hey, Tim.
How's everybody?
Great.
Good. So well, June, I'll let you carry on and sally forth there. It sounds like you're okay with 21 now, but do you want to talk to Tim about 22, or do we need to discuss 21?
Well, 21, I don't have a problem with. I don't know if anybody else has any questions about it.
No.
Okay.
No, I just grabbed the wrong number, June. It's.
That's okay. No, that's fine.
So 21 deals with estimated revenue for fiscal 23.
Okay.
It's not revenue we will expend at this town meeting. We'll just target it to be accordingly placed in the 3 categories that it needs to be dumped into: the community housing, community historic, and the open space rec. And 10% of our estimated revenue needs to be set into those categories at the annual town meeting.
Right.
We got
So this one,
$281,250 as a match from the state back in November. And I believe
Okay.
that's revenue we've received. And that's assuming that was 100% match. So that's based on an estimate of ours that we would generate about 281,000. So that gives us that $562,500 amount that's estimated for fiscal 23, and that's where we get the 10% for the 3 categories. The administrative expense is 5% of the total expended amount, expected amount, and the budgeted reserve is the amount that's remaining after we deduct those other 4 items. But again, we don't we don't anticipate any expenditure from those accounts at this town meeting.
and aren't we always doing this, Tim? We always have to first put the money collected
Right.
into it, and then we have a separate article that talks about the expenditures. So
But
this is,
the expenditures are coming from funds that were generated in fiscal 22,
right.
which,
So this one is always just it's just a housekeeping, and this is basically housekeeping. This is just allocating money that has come in to the funds as required.
that we anticipate.
This is
Correct.
anticipation.
Estimated
This
revenue.
is not- Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And some towns, their CPA committees will utilize estimated revenue when they go to town meeting. Hudson doesn't do that. And as
Okay.
I've discussed it with Hudson, and we've discussed it as a CPA committee, we feel far more comfortable following their pattern. So we we used initially in that round back when we first put some money we used money from 21 and 22 combined last November. And we stole about 30,000 from estimated revenue from 23.
Careful, Tim.
What?
Yeah, he didn't really mean that. We understand what he was saying.
But our goal is to try to stay a year behind.
Right.
So that's
Okay.
all I have to say about that one.
Okay,
June may,
then I would
June may
ask
have
at
some
this
other
point,
thoughts.
yeah, I was gonna, June, do you have any other concerns or comments on this?
Nope, this is just something that needs to be done every single year
Yeah,
to make sure that we have everything in ducks in the row.
right, ducks. So can I have a motion for the ducks?
I'll motion the ducks for 21.
Yeah, I'll submit that.
Do we need any further discussion about the ducks?
Be more creative
Okay.
next time.
No, I love it.
Since both June and Tim are here, let me just understand that this is the reason for this article is really to put the money in the place that it needs to go to. Yeah. Is that the
For
idea?
next fiscal year, yes.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
next
pretty
fiscal
much,
year.
this is like pretty much setting up the budget just like we do for the town's regular budget. He's just estimating how much money is going to be brought in this coming year in fiscal year 23. And he's appropriating money to be spent on administrative expenses. So when they have an administrator, they can pay them out of that account line item, just like we do with the budget. And the same thing with the budgeted reserve.
So I know, I checked my file, and when we got the annual census mailing at either the end or the beginning of the year from the town office, on the back of it, it had all of the CPA activity listed, and it did say that we had received that, whatever Tim's figure, that 281,000 in revenue in hand, and the state had agreed to 100% match. But as Tim said, I don't know when the state money's actually hit our coffers.
That actually comes in as a revenue. I sat down today and approximately right now, it looks like for the estimated revenues for next year, it's probably going to be approximately actually close to probably 58. 588,000. So I think that them using the 56 is a very good estimate. With the state, you never know exactly what you're going to get with it. So they're actually underestimating just a little bit.
Oh, right. The 280, yes, the sum of the two figures, 56, yep. But my question, June, is, have we received that state money, or is that still?
This current year, we've received 281,000, yes.
We got the match.
Yes, for fiscal year 22. This here we're referencing is 23.
Okay, so we don't
So we're
have,
just estimating it, just like when we sit down and we estimate how much money we think we're going to get in local receipts. That's pretty much what they're doing here for the CPA funds.
okay.
So if we estimate too high, because we're saying it's an estimate, it's okay. Is that correct?
As far as what
Well,
aspect,
what if
Jim?
we can't do 56, 250 because something came up or they didn't match us or whatever? Because it's an estimate, they're not guaranteed it, correct?
Correct. And if it should come up short, we would have to raise the difference on the recap sheet.
Okay,
Well, and also this is not expenditures, so they
Right.
still have to, groups have to come forward with their proposals and allocate the money. And if there was not enough money there, then we have to adjust the money that they're looking for.
yeah. I just want to make sure I understood that. Thank you.
But my question, June, is that I thought you said at one point about the administrative expenses. So would we actually be paying FY23 administrative expenses out of this FY23 money? Or are
Yes.
we paying it out of FY22?
Nope, it will come out of 23 because this is setting up their budget for fiscal year 23.
So
They
of
already
all the-
have money in 22.
So of all these items that are listed here, the other one, we work in arrears by a year on all the other ones, but this one we're actually working in the current year.
No, actually, all of these that you're looking at here are all based on next year's estimated revenues. So if you look at it like we do our whole budget, the town's budget, we estimate how much money we're going to take in, which would be on the bottom numbers there where you see the 56,000. It's kind of backwards, but those amounts there are based on what are 10% of what we think we're going to collect next year in revenues.
Yeah.
And then the top numbers, the appropriations, is where they're setting up like we do our line items. So we're going to budget money, expecting money to come in, but we're going to budget out of those revenues 5% to, which is the 28,000, which would be for administrative expenses. And then they're also putting in a budgeted reserve of the 365, which would allow them then at later, like in a fall town meeting, they could go back and spend that money on something else, on another project. So it's kind of like setting up their own little budget that they have to estimate it and they have to appropriate funds before it can be spent based on the estimate that money is going to come in.
And as I think about what you're asking, Stan, I think you're correct. The 28,000 that we put into administrative is funds that we would have to use in fiscal 23, whereas those others wouldn't be utilized until we had articles on a warrant to expend them.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
is that right, June?
that's exactly
We'd
what I was
actually
thinking.
spend some of that 28 if we had an assistant.
So Tim,
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Right.
Because we can't carry over administrative funds. They go back into the, any unexpended administrative funds for CPA at the end of the fiscal year go back into the reserve, which is
Yeah.
either, I guess I can't remember all the names of these accounts, but
Both any unexpended money in the administrative expenses or the budgeted reserve go back into or close out to the undesignated fund balance,
right.
which then eventually after June 30th would become a free cash for CPA. I guess
Yep.
that's the only way I can
But
explain
it's
it.
still all dedicated to CPA, just CPA down the
Oh,
road.
absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
And the
None of it's
free
reverting to free cash.
not to town's free cash, no,
Right.
it's all within the CPA funds.
So,
Yeah.
so Tim, this would be the one exception to our general rule that we don't make expenditures from these estimated reserves, but we do just for the administrative expenses, which are here are 28,125.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think as we've talked about it, that becomes clearer to me in terms of how it's generated and expended, because it has to be from that fund, and it can only be from the stuff we're generating this time around.
So do we have a motion on this article?
Yeah, I'll move that we vote to recommend this article.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion on Article 21? Hearing none, roll call vote. Oh, was there a question? No? Hearing none, roll call vote. Stan, aye.
Mary, I.
Jen and I.
Yeah,
Scott, I.
So now, June, we move on to 22.
Margaret,
Or Margaret.
you can scroll down. Article 22. This is where I have concerns. Currently in the CPA funds as of today, based on the numbers that you just saw above, we do that at the end of every year, we allocate 10% into the different categories, which are open space, recreation, historical, and affordable housing. We currently have in open space funds that have been set aside, 48,466.70, which will be available because of this year's money coming in. In historical, we have 48,000, same as the other one. My question or my concern is at this point in time, at the end of June, we close out all unexpended expenditures or appropriations into an undesignated fund balance in the CPA funds. At the end of June, we have that certified when I close the books, which would be any money that's not expended would go into that account. Now, that's only done at the end of June. And as of the end of June last year, we had funding in there. It was 528,723.28. Now, at the November special town meeting that we had, we spent all of that money except for 4 cents. So that money does not get replenished until the books are closed at the end of June. So we currently, as of right now, we currently have in the budgeted reserve, which is the amount that can be expended for other items between the time that the books have closed and the following year, expenditures can be made out of that. And currently we have $283,000 on the books right now, but that there will close out at the end of June. Everybody with me so far?
Which bucket are we looking at here? Is it the undesignated fund? Where's the 48 cents? Which fund is that?
The 4 cents is left into something called the undesignated fund balance, which is where we are right now. So my concern is that we are actually allocating money, and it's being referenced here to the undesignated fund balance, which is making me nervous because right now all I'm showing is 4 cents. If we were taking that money out of the budgeted reserve, then that would be the amount that was just approved on the top of what we just approved in Article 1.
So in other words, we're spending money in Article 22 that we don't have.
Well, this is why I needed to chat with Tim, but I haven't been able to do so. So I don't know what their thoughts were. So unless I'm misunderstanding what they're trying to do.
So
And how much money is that, June? There's so many numbers on here. All of it?
The 43.5.
This
So
here is
June-
historical. Yep, go ahead, Tim.
So we've got the 48 plus in the open space currently. Right? And we've got 48,000 in the historic.
Correct.
And then we've got X amount in the budgeted reserve. So what this article does is it's misrepresenting where the funds are coming from, because, you know, like you've said, you and I haven't sat down and put all the pieces together, which we're going to try to do tomorrow. So what'll happen is this will be rewritten with, instead of 56 from the fund balance for historic resources, it's going to be 48 plus. And then we'll take from budgeted reserve an amount to try to get us up to 100,000. What our goal is going to be is to try to reach that 100,000 figure. What we may discover is that between budgeted reserve and what's available in those other two funds, we don't have the amount of money that we anticipated for the two articles. So we'll adjust those accordingly based on what we've currently got available. right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking we're gonna need to do.
Well, it sounded like the numbers you read off, June, add up to 90 something and you're looking for 100. If I'm looking at big picture here.
Well, that's my concern, and that's
Right.
why I wanted to talk with Tim first before this was finalized.
Okay, well, I mean, I think
So,
we could
I
talk
don't-
and talk and talk about this, but we're not going to vote on an article that doesn't have any of the right numbers on it.
Yeah,
So,
you can't move forward on this one tonight.
right. So what I would suggest to my committee here is that we look at making a recommendation on this article as it's presented. Once the warrant comes out, we can meet at any point, or even if it's just the night of the town meeting, and we can have a verbal recommendation to the town. Doesn't have to be printed in the report. We can have a verbal recommendation based on our reading through it at that point and decide whether we're in favor or not in favor of it. There's someone speaking
agree.
that muted. Yeah.
I agree.
Yes.
Okay, then I'd say we just skip over 22 at this point, and at least for now.
Does that also apply to 23?
It would, yes.
Okay.
So we're not going to talk about 23 either.
Well,
Well, if-
I'd like to talk about
Um,
23 and some other,
Well, I was going to
Fashion.
say, we can certainly discuss it, but go ahead, Tim, what did you want to say about it?
well, there's a couple things. One is I noticed the other night there was conversation about can state grants that come back to reimburse expenditures out of CPA not go to CPA first. And the way I've understood it with my conversations with Stuart Saganor, who's with the Community Preservation Coalition in Boston, is that CPA expenditures that are matched, that match needs to come back into the CPA account. And the way this article reads, it stipulates that money that is granted from a state grant or a federal grant comes back into the CPA account. So that was one thing I wanted to clarify. My hope had always been that if at some point the town were to spend free cash, for instance, on a CPA article that got some sort of state or federal match, the money would go back to free cash first, and then excess would go into CPA. But my understanding at this point is that that's not the way we can accomplish that. So
Right.
that's one issue.
Okay.
I think the other conversation.
Can we speak about this first issue before we move on to the next one?
Sure.
Because I think we're going to get confusing. I think that's what we all discussed last week at our meeting, and that's why, and Scott might be able to speak to it. That's why we feel like we set up the CPA so in order not to spend free cash, and that even if you've got a grant and we spent the free cash, it would go back to CPA and not replenish our free cash. And Scott can probably speak to it, but I think that's how I understood that last week. Am I correct?
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to, I mean, because this is obviously a combination, I mean, it's related to Article 24 because it's the money being going to the same purpose, which is the open space piece. And of course, that's where you see the free cash, a number of 100,000 being requested. And we were looking at, the part of it was look at is we had this new pot of money from the community preservation funds coming in. And I know we have this opportunity with this piece of land, but it's one of those cases where we've got a lot of designated money and it's not quite enough yet. And of course, there's money we can't use in other areas of the budget. So a little bit of the issue is starting to dip into the fact that you have to dip into free cash. And if we need to start dipping into free cash, because I know there's a time frame on this particular piece of land, what could be done in the future to replenish the free cash that, in my opinion, and this is specifically my opinion on this, is that you're kind of like borrowing from the future of things from community preservation or open space. And it sounds like you've answered the question, at least from the sense of, one of the questions was on the grants. If we had received the grants, I didn't realize that the grants were tied specifically to CPA money being expended. Is that, so I understand that the grants are only would be available if CPA money is expended? Is that correct?
If you were not using any CPA money, then the money wouldn't flow back into the CPA accounts. But
Yeah,
because
it's a separate,
but this is
it's a
a
separate issue
mixture.
from the grants.
Yeah, but this is a mixture of CPA. I mean, because Article 23 and Article 24, because it's where the free cash is coming in is from Article 24, but those two things are all combining together into one pot of money to buy the open space or buy this piece of property.
right.
So,
and I anticipating that an amount might come out of free cash, had a conversation with Stuart and said, is it possible to reimburse the town for the free cash it expends with the state grant money that tries to, support this purchase? And he said to me at that time that the money needed to go back into CPA. Now, I'll ask that question again, and I think we can ask that question to town council, but for the time being, I think we have to assume that the mechanism isn't there to replenish the free cash from those state funds.
I'm going to have to back Tim on that because that's one of the stipulations in the CPA funding. If you actually read into it, is that any type of money that is made off of like if we were to purchase this land and we were to sell off a lot, if we were to sell that lot off, that money has to go back into the CPA funds. It cannot go into anything other than that because the actual purchase is made using CPA funding. So as Tim was just saying, if we're purchasing this land with the use of CPA funds, any money or any profit from this purchase would have to go back into CPA funds.
okay, what about, I guess the question here is this grant. I'm not sure, is there a certain percentage maximum that you could possibly be looking at from this grant?
Maximum amount of revenue
Right, well,
stream
I
that
guess,
we might
I guess,
get.
like what I'm looking at, like, let's just put round numbers. I know the land thing is like 1 point something million, but if the land was purchased for 1 million and 700,000 was CPA funds, 200,000 was open space, and 100,000 was free cash, and you received a grant that covered the whole 1 million, are you saying that the whole 1 million would have to go back into CPA funds, even though
No,
only 700,000 was used?
Scott, I don't know how to answer that question.
Okay. I guess that's one of the questions. Do we have an idea of how much the grant could potentially, I mean, is there a cap to like, it would
Well,
be
I
only a
think-
certain percentage?
Carolyn is probably floating around in the audience, and I think she can answer that question better.
Can
Can
I
promote-
ask one other question? If we use free cash money to fund this, could we use the Solomon Pond mitigation money that goes to open space to refund free cash?
But
That's
see,
not tied. I'm just asking. It's not tied to CPA.
Guys,
I don't know if
it's
that's
Julia
possible.
speaking.
it's dedicated.
Carolyn and Krista Collins
Right.
are in the audience. I'm going to allow them to talk since most likely they can answer these questions.
Yes,
So,
please.
so in regard to the mitigation money from Solomon Pond Mall, that's money that flows to the Conservation Commission for the purpose of acquiring open space. So I would think that would be a difficult transition to try to take money out of the conservation fund and put it back into free cash. But again, that's a question for town council. And in regard to the use of, if the town, if it's going to buy a piece of land and it can't sell that conservation land, it has to work through a third party. And that's why Krista's got her hand raised. That's why we're using Sudbury Valley trustees. They end up being able to accommodate a number of opportunities, so they can apply for grants that we can't. We can't apply for the grant until if we own the land. So they buy the land, they apply for the grant on our behalf. If land were to be sold, it couldn't be sold by us. It would have to be sold by them. So there's a lot of stipulations that limit the opportunity for the town to act independently. And I'll be quiet now.
If I may.
Yes, go ahead.
So Tim got that all right, except for we actually apply for the grants.
Okay.
So, but we cannot apply for grants on land that we own. So he was 100% right in that Sudbury Valley Trustees has, graciously offered to put this money out on our behalf so that we can apply for these grants. And Scott, to answer your question about how much money we could possibly get back, the MVP grant reimburses up to 75% of the purchase price, and the land grant reimburses up to 50%. So if we cannot receive both of them, the MVP grant pays out first. So if we are awarded that, we have to withdraw our land grant. But we've applied for both with the land grant as a backup in case we don't get the MVP grant. So if we get one of these grants, the minimum that we would get is $600,000. So at the meeting, at your meeting that I watched the other day, there was conversation about the Conservation Commission sucking up all the money. Well, here's an opportunity to put $600,000 into CPA. That if this project is not 100% funded at this town meeting, which is the $100,000 that we are short, then we will have to withdraw our land grant application and our MVP grant application, and we will have absolutely no opportunity to get any grant money back, and it is all gone. We'll still buy the land, but the opportunity to get any money back is gone.
So the grants are only available if we've appropriated already the purchase price.
Correct. That
And,
doesn't mean, go ahead.
Okay, and then after we've appropriated it, the grant, if we get a grant, the grant would be awarded before the actual purchase is made by the town. Correct?
It has to be. We can't
Okay.
sign a state contract unless we hold, if I understood you correctly, Scott, we cannot sign off on a state contract for funds if we've already expended the funds on it. So in order to receive the
Correct.
funds, don't we have to hold off, Carolyn? Is that the way?
Yes.
that I
Yep.
understand
You're
the land
absolutely
grant?
right, Margaret.
Okay.
Right. So if we were to if the town were to vote to allow us the $100,000 out of free cash, there is a fair chance we will never need it, but we need on paper to have this project 100% funded. It doesn't mean we won't sell a lot it doesn't mean that but we cannot get these grants. We cannot apply for these grants. And we cannot afford the town the opportunity to get these large chunks of money if we do not have this project 100% funded at this town meeting.
Okay, so it sounds like you've, I mean, answered the question that, at least from the initial part, what Tim was, the question coming back from, how money is, like replenished. In this case, it's not a case it would have to be replenished if we receive the grant, because we wouldn't
have actually spent it.
Exactly, we would
Yep.
have raised it, but the grant comes in, the grant would offset part of that cost, and you would not have to take from free cash or what other sets of money you don't want to expend, whether
Correct.
it's community preservation funds or open
No.
space funds.
Correct. The
Sorry,
state,
finish that
actually,
off.
Carolyn,
No,
can I
the-
jump in? This is Krista.
yes, Krista, go ahead.
Sorry, because that's the town actually does have to produce a canceled check to the state. So you actually do have to spend the money. But I would really like clarification on whether that it is very surprising to me to hear that the free cash would have to go back into CPA funds. I absolutely makes sense that CPA funds would have to go back into the CPA, but it would be weird. It seems weird to me that the free cash, we couldn't go back into free cash. And I apologize because I'm trying to do two meetings at once right here. So I just wanted to add that the sellers did not want to allow for the sale of a lot, and I said, we really would like to have that in the option agreement as a sort of a last ditch contingency. Like if we don't get either of the grants, then we will sell a lot. So it really was their preference that no lots get sold.
Krista, why is that?
I think because they really wanted to see the property go into conservation.
So just to be clear, the agreement does allow for one of the for a piece to be sold if absolutely necessary, even though the owners didn't prefer that.
Right.
Okay.
Thank you, Margaret. So Krista, I don't mean to be the bad news bearer, and I was quite tired last week when I was talking, so I was out of turn a bit. But I think from the town's perspective, we're really hatching together here, and everything has to sort of fall in the right direction for this to come together, and it would take a whole lot of pressure off. I'm looking at the summary under Article 24, which says Sudbury Valley has committed $50,000 in fundraising from their members. We've got $490,000 from the last fall's town meeting and so on. If this summary, if we had a Sudbury Valley trustee commitment to sell a lot here, a certain amount, we might have a better shot at having the town appropriate the entire amount to get this thing done.
Well,
and be able to, can I finish? And to be able to satisfy the requirements of the grant applications that are out there.
So there's a sequencing issue here. So town meeting, is happening May 2nd. We need to have the vote to appropriate the full amount of funds. Then we kind of, SVT buys the property. We wait to find out if we get the grants. If we don't get the grants, then we can sell a lot. But I don't see why we would have to commit to selling a lot at town meeting.
So that we could take that other article off with the extra funding, or certainly at least take the free cash off. So we just don't deal with it.
But we
we
can't
still-
take,
yeah.
right, we cannot take the article off the warrant because the 1.25 million will not be appropriated without the $100,000.
Okay, but we're talking about $50,000 in fundraising committed by Sudbury Valley. Does that go into the total figure, or is that? I mean,
it does. We're raising funds privately. We're also raising. We've already got one $75,000 grant. We've got another, or been invited to apply for another $75,000 grant. So it is possible that we will have raised enough money by closing that we don't have to use the free cash, but we need to have it we need to have it in the vote.
I still don't understand why that's necessary. If we look at this article with the purchase price and we describe how we're going to reach it, can't we have Sudbury Valley pick up a bigger portion in that?
It's a requirement of the state grant process that you have a town meeting vote appropriating the full amount of the purchase price.
Period.
And I'm sorry, I'm supposed to be presenting at this other meeting, so I have to hop off, but I think Carolyn has a great handle on this, and I'm happy to have a conversation with anyone offline afterwards. So thank you all for considering this.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Krista.
Krista.
Carolyn, can I just ask a question?
Yeah,
So pretty much what the steps are then is that the town has to appropriate the full funding for the purchase of the land so that we're committed to repay Sudbury Valley. Is that pretty much what
correct.
the gist is? So this 1.2.
Right, and so it's really, so just so that we all have the language actually clear, it's so that we're committed to purchasing the property from who the entity that will own it. So Sudbury Valley trustees, if you think of them as the owners of the land,
right,
because they will be.
Okay, so
Right.
it's pretty much then we're going to pretend that Sudbury Valley has already bought it. Let's just
Correct.
pretend for a second.
Yep,
So we as a town would say that we would that we authorize the purchase of this land for the 1.2 whatever.
yep,
Now that gives us the ability now to apply for the state grant,
correct,
reimburse us because it will be a reimbursement grant, right?
correct,
Okay, so it's pretty much like we have to actually, like we did with the old grant long time ago, where we actually have to physically pay the money out to get the money back.
correct, right, just like we did with the Oberg property.
So it's pretty
The-
much one of those, we have to spend it and then they're gonna hopefully write us a check for 75% of what we purchase.
Correct. And we will know before we purchase it whether we're getting the reimbursement or not. I believe. Certainly we'll know about the MVP grant because that, my understanding is that pays out in, or that gets awarded in June.
So if all said and done, netted, if we get the grant that is supposed to be coming in, the difference would be just 25% of this is what the town would
Correct.
actually have to pay out.
Correct.
And anything over and above what CPA spent out could also go back to the town.
Well, it goes back to CPA.
Right, but
Oh, I
anything
see
that,
what you're saying. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
so if there's a
Yes,
little bit of a
absolutely.
difference.
Right, well, if we yes, yeah, there's a lot of math happening here and there's so many moving parts. We're all trying to keep it all straight. But yes, should we need, I guess the easy answer to your question, and I think what your question really is if we only need a portion of the money from CPA, and we do wind up taking money from free cash, which I don't really picture only some of the CPA money happening, but all of the free cash, I don't know how that would work, but in a scenario like that, it is my understanding that only what we've taken from CPA would go back to CPA. And then if there is additional funds, free cash would get paid back from that.
And then anything else over and above that would go into open space. I
is-
don't have the numbers in front of me, but I'm just trying to see in order
Right.
where it would go.
Yeah, I mean, out of 1.25 million for 100 acres of land, it kills me that we're $100,000 short. But that is the reality. That is $1,000 an acre for a piece of property that everybody believes is an important piece of property for the town to own.
Yeah.
And
I agree, Carolyn. Can I ask, I wanted to have this dialogue and get into these kinds of details because it's important. And so again, I'm looking at the summary in Article 24, and the purchase price is $1,250,000. But the town of Berlin is buying it from Sudbury Valley, right? And Sudbury Valley is buying it from the owner. And the owner's price to Sudbury Valley is $1,250,000. And I'm just asking the question because I don't have the answer. But could Sudbury Valley agree to sell this? We would purchase it from Sudbury Valley at a lower figure
Yes.
that assumes that Sudbury Valley is going to sell a lot, and then they're going to sell the remainder to the town. We're going to buy the remainder.
Well,
so that we don't need the full 1.25 million that's going to the current owners. Is that an avenue to resolve some of the issues we're talking about?
so there's a lot of things that you just said. So I feel like you're stuck on the selling of the lot. So I'm for the moment going to not consider that, but the 1.25 purchase price is the amount of money that we have applied for from the grants. In reality, we will pay Sudbury Valley trustees, according to this summary, and I see where you're kind of at. Sudbury Valley will be looking for 1.2 from us, and maybe less. Because, but the wording in the document, we have to have the full 1.25 appropriated.
And that's grant money
to apply for the grant.
But we're asking for the grant so that we can purchase it from Sudbury Valley, yes?
We're asking the grant to reimburse us for purchasing it. We are purchasing this from Sudbury Valley, whether we get the grant or not. It is a reimbursement grant. It is not a to buy the property grant.
Yeah, and that goes to my point that if Sudbury Valley would work with us in this area, I mean, we still have
so if we get the grant, we don't need to sell a lot. But if we don't get the grant, then it can be considered. But without knowing the status of the grants, we would prefer to not have to sell any lots. No, I mean, I don't know that anybody wants to see houses there. And so it's a last resort.
Yeah, understood. And have we filed the grants, the application for grants?
We've filed the pre-applications. Actually, if you could let Maddie speak, she can tell you better the status of those.
I have a question too. What if we don't get the grants? Then where's this money all coming from?
Well, it's coming from exactly where we're appropriating it from.
Well, yes, but that's free cash. So that's where
it's $100,000 from free cash, correct? For 100 acres of land.
And is there $100,000 in conservation budget to spend or no?
Absolutely not. No.
Asking.
If there was, I wouldn't be asking for free cash. I would so rather be doing something else right now. I can't even tell you. I do not want to have to be asking for this money.
Well,
there is nothing I would rather be. There's so many other things that I would rather be doing. But the reality is we're $100,000 short. And if the town feels that it's appropriate, that it's important and a priority for us to try to get these reimbursement grants, this is the path. If the finance committee doesn't feel that this is a priority, then it's going to save Maddie a ton of work. It's going to save me a ton of work. It's going to save Krista a ton of work. And we'll figure out how to I don't know what we'll do. I don't know how we'll come up with the shortfall, but we'll come up with it somehow.
Margaret,
And
May I ask?
Margaret,
May I ask a question? My question is there, it sounds like, okay, so there's a purchase and sale. Is there any chance that we could lose this property altogether? And if so, this is a really dumb question, but I think it's a question we could all answer. Is there a potential that a developer could buy this? I just, at first, I
Yeah.
want to know, is there a potential that we could lose this land altogether if the funding does not come through?
If the funding doesn't come through, Sudbury Valley trustees could choose to not exercise the option that they have with the property owner. They just now only have an option to buy. So they don't own the property.
Yeah.
They're trying to wait as long as possible to actually purchase the property so that when we buy it from them, there is as little time in between as possible so that as little interest is charged as possible.
Okay, so I've got a kind of a related question. I think typically the land grant uses highest and best use on appraisal.
Yep.
If this land was developable, how many homes could be put on it?
So the appraisal, because we haven't been able to get onto the property to perk it, the estimated highest use would be 26 homes. Now, I'm not sure how realistic that is, but that is what the appraisal says. So potentially, so yes, in the worst case of all worst cases, Sudbury Valley could decide to not exercise the option because the town hasn't funded the project. The property owners could sell it to a developer, and the developer potentially could put as many as 26 houses up there.
All right, I was just asking. I know it's a worst case scenario. I mean, do you have any indication from Sudbury Valley that they would not want to exercise the option if the town didn't come up with the funding?
We haven't had that conversation.
Okay.
I mean,
That was just a question.
right, because there has been, up until now, there has been such broad support. And honestly, I apologize to the finance committee for not maybe making clear earlier how intertwined all of this is and how each of the items depend on each other. I guess.
Well, yeah, Caroline, if I may, I would say the two things to that is that, yes, I for one did not understand that we could not apply for the grants unless this was fully funded. But two,
it does say it in the summary, but of the
Okay.
next article, but yes.
Okay, well, if that was our discussion last week, and I don't think any of us all sat here and thought that that we couldn't apply for the grants if we didn't have it fully funded. So
Yep, and that's why I asked to come tonight to tonight's meeting,
right, and
because
then
I
the other
wanted
piece
you
is
guys
that-
to understand.
Yep, and then the other piece was at town meeting last year, is that there absolutely was a discussion about selling lots. And I think that's where all of us are thinking that was a potential viable option for helping to fund this process. And it has been a long-standing process in the town to acquire conservation land by some combination of development and open space and town funds. And that's exactly what happened at the top of Barnes Hill with that property. And that is absolutely a viable option for acquiring property. So that's where I believe, or at least that's where I was coming from on voting for this, and that the town doesn't, but the town putting up free cash is tantamount to just putting money out there instead of exploring these other options, and potentially, which was discussed, was selling the lots. And I think that's why we're kind of focused on that.
Understood. And I absolutely agree with you about the history of it. The biggest difference with this property and the part that's making it much more cumbersome is that the property owner did not want to enter into an agreement that was contingent on our financing.
Right.
So they did not want to enter into an agreement with the town.
Okay.
So we
Go ahead.
are not the owners.
Yep.
So we
get
don't
that.
get to make all of those decisions.
I get that. And the other thing
Yep.
that I would say is the flip side to this too, then, is if you use the property at the top of Barnes Hill as an example, that the town did pay $100,000 for all of the open space that they did acquire up there. And so we could look at this and say that this is our skin in the game to acquire all this property, and we just don't have to do we don't have to do any development. We're just putting out the 100,000 to get all this land. And it's the grant money that is paying the rest of it. And in fact, if we get the grant money, we're not paying any of that.
Correct.
So,
And if we have the grant money, we're gonna be able to fund all of the money will go back to CPA.
right, but we're still out the 100,000. There has to be, what we're
Sure.
struggling with is right. So what we're struggling with is, do we just decide as a committee that we're willing to spend 100,000 in free cash? Or is there a mechanism for repaying that 100,000 somehow out of land money, however you want to put it, whether it's conservation money that was going to be dedicated or paid out of a fund in future years? Is there something that cannot be allocated for that, but put back into, or not allocated so that it reverts to free cash? Or do we just decide we're going to spend 100,000 to buy the property and that's what we decide?
Well, I don't really want to be the one to suggest this, but as Margaret explained at your last meeting, at the next town meeting, the $50,000 from Solomon Pond has to be voted into our open space fund. Now, I am not necessarily in agreement with that. The money was negotiated for open space regardless. That's not tonight's argument.
Wait, I'm sorry, wasn't that one taken out? Was that Article 6 that was taken out?
For this year, it was taken out, but it will be
You're muted,
on for
Margaret.
next year.
Margaret, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Yes, Carolyn's correct. It was taken off only for this year. There is still, let me think, there are still 4 more years, 5 more years of the article coming.
Right. So if it came to it that we needed this $100,000, you could certainly advocate at the town meeting next year that $50,000 be used to go to free cash to cover this money.
That was the question I proposed like 10
Yeah.
minutes ago.
And can we, June?
Yes, that's where I was supporting, because to my point, it would not be a case of us taking money that was dedicated to open space and using for some other purpose. I would look at it as the town providing essentially an interest-free loan of $100,000 to purchase this land now, and then you'll pay that back interest-free back to the town at the $50,000 increments. And we still even have a slight risk with that, because who knows what could happen to the Solomon Pond in the future. So I think it's very viable. And if we want to look at that, and my personal opinion is that is something that would make me supportive of this, I would want to actually, make that point at town meeting this year. Obviously, there'd be no specific vote of that nature, but to explain where
Lay the
this
groundwork.
100,000 would come from.
Yeah.
Yes, lay the groundwork for it.
Yeah.
And I would be
And-
very much in favor of the 100,000 in free cash this year, going with that assumption if the grants don't come through and stuff like that. I mean, this is that's like the worst case scenario.
Right. If we wind up needing the $100,000, if we don't wind up needing the $100,000, please don't do that.
Well,
Yeah.
correct.
There's no need
correct.
to.
Right.
We're not
Absolutely.
trying to steal your money in the future, Carolyn. That's not our intent.
Yes. And
Right,
that's
and
why
I'm
I-
not trying to, like I said, I would rather not have to be having this conversation. I would rather have been able to come up with the $100,000 a different way. But
Carolyn, it's okay to have these conversations. It's okay to be creative about these things. It's okay to have a discussion about how to do this. And that's why we sit here as a committee of citizens, is to have these discussions. This is good. Stan articulated much better than I did my sensibilities about this, what we've done historically in town. And I don't want to see another house built in town, but that's not reality. And this idea, let me ask a question, Carolyn. The MVP, was it MVP grant or MVP grant, would max out at 75% of the purchase price? Did I hear that correctly?
correct.
Right. So if we're looking at, I don't do the math in my head so well, but 75% of 1.25 million.
Well, hold on, I have a calculator right here.
Please hold.
Right.
825, I'm gonna guess.
Okay,
Right.
there you go. So
I'm guessing.
825. So
I don't know, I'm guessing. What is it, Carolyn?
How about 937?
Isn't even
Times
close. Usually
75%.
better than that.
Right, 937.5.
So
Sorry.
if we have the 9 and change, how do we figure out what wasn't covered? I mean, Carolyn, I think we really need a commitment along the line Scott said, that any free cash that goes out in this town meeting vote would come back to the extent that there still are mitigation funds from open space funds out of some.
But Mary, we don't need, if we get the 75%, we don't need any of the 100,000. It all comes out of their open space money.
But where does
Technically, if we got the MVP grant at 75% of the 1.25, at like 900 and some odd change, that would mean we'd only actually have to pay out $312,500 then for this land.
None of which is free cash.
Which
Okay.
would all
None of
be-
which is free cash,
be
correct?
that's the piece that I wasn't following. Thank you.
Right,
That-
Carolyn, does that
It's
sound
only
right?
the worst case scenario. If
June.
we get no
Okay.
grant money, do we have to pay any free cash?
No
Okay.
free
It's only if we
cash
get
and-
neither grant. If we get
Right,
either of
and-
them, we will have.
And
we will not have
also,
to pay.
if Sudbury Valley, Krista mentioned that they have applied for a $75,000 grant, which is over and above their $50,000 commitment for fundraising. So if no other money was raised, we might only need 25,000 if they get that grant. And I know there's a lot going on here, believe me. It makes my head spin and I'm deep
But we also
into
have a
it.
mechanism to pay, if we also have a mechanism to pay this back in worst case. Worst
Correct.
case is for the next 2 years, we use the open space money for what it's intended for, which is open space, and we pay this back. Like at this point, there's not even a real, to me, it's not even a decision anymore, but let's please continue the conversation, but that's.
Well, I make a motion.
Well, I'd love you to make a motion, Carolyn, and come and join our committee, and we'll have 6 members.
I was hoping I'd
So,
sneak that by
Stephen,
you.
Good try,
Stan,
though.
So we're all in agreement with this whole thing now,
Well,
and I,
I'm
know,
not sure
after we
that,
go-
but
well,
okay, maybe.
Yeah, well, I think we are. So is there any way that article can somehow be written so it's a little bit more transparent to the community? Or is that something we're gonna have to stand up and talk to and say that, if none of the grants come through and we, want to purchase this property, that the monies will be able to be, the free cash will be able to be reimbursed via this mechanism? I think that's the piece that I'm having a hard problem with.
Right, well, that would have to happen at town meeting next year and that would be a vote. But I don't think anybody would not support
Well,
that.
The actual
Carolyn,
payback.
June-
Jen's
Correct, the
talking about-
actual payback.
I think
Right.
Jen's talking about the current articles that are in draft.
Yes.
They're not-
I don't know, I don't know that we should put that in the article, but certainly if there's a way to get it in the summary, or if you're doing a town meeting handout or something like that. But again, I think, Carolyn, you're gonna need to bring this back to the Conservation Commission, obviously. But is that a possibility that you could put it in the summary or a handout for town meeting?
I have no problem necessarily doing that, but I guess part of my question is, would that create additional confusion? Because it's a new concept that we have to vote this money in. It's a new concept next year.
I think, I think the way it was explained tonight could be made understandable in writing. I don't know if you're willing to write up something. I'm happy to work on it with you
Yeah, that would be great.
Okay.
Yep.
I
Yeah,
don't
I
wanna-
am. Go ahead.
I didn't want to throw in anything else to make it more confusing, but technically, if the agreement was all agreed upon, that this would be like an advancement on the Solomon Pond payments for the next 2 years, that special article wouldn't necessarily be needed. We may just want to make a notation somewhere that, says due to however the agreement wants to be worked, because we wouldn't actually need an article to do anything with it, because unfortunately, because of the way that the state wants us to handle it, the money is going to become part of free cash automatically now. It's just that we have to vote it out to get it to go over to open space.
Right.
So it would just be, definitely we'd want to make a notation of it, so there's nothing funny going on, that somebody can't come back later on and say, we weren't given the money or whatever.
Yep.
But it wouldn't have to be a big extra monkey wrench type thing.
Right. I think I agree with Margaret in that I wouldn't want to put it in the warrant article that this is absolutely what would happen, only because we
Don't
may
need
not
that
even
money.
need the money.
That
So
would-
I
that
don't
would
want to vote
completely-
to give that money to free cash when we may not actually use the money.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I would certainly
can I
be
say
willing to
something?
put. Yep.
This is Julia speaking. No, I just have a question because this keeps coming up about the free cash getting reimbursed only if it gets used. Is it possible, Carolyn, for you to go back? Because at this point, we can discuss this and change our vote anytime before town meeting, okay? It's not urgent. We don't have to do anything tonight. Could you basically, at your next conservation committee meeting, basically take a vote if you guys would agree to that? Because I know you've come here and you're talking to us, but I would feel better if we had a sense that that's what the whole conservation committee
That's
has
fair.
discussed
Yep.
and felt about, rather than us going back and forth. Well, we could do this, we could do that. It's going to happen. It's not going to happen.
Right.
And this way, it would be explicit. I think it would be more explicit and.
And it would certainly be recorded in our minutes.
But it would also be like, then you could have it for, an additional summary or handout.
Yeah. Yeah, I absolutely can bring it before the commission
Okay.
and lobby hard.
And
I
then
think,
if you-
I hope a fair number of the members are here tonight anyway, so.
And then the other thing I was going to ask is when you do that, then if you could email back to FinCom, because then we could discuss it if we have a meeting between now and then. So we don't have to wait until the very last minute.
Absolutely. Do you
need to
know
know
if you
that.
will have a meeting between now and town meeting? Oh, between our meeting, so our meeting's next Wednesday.
It depends on how much work we have left and if anything special comes up. Stan can speak to that as well.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's exactly what Julie said, and I don't know, at this point, there'd be nothing, there's no agenda items for us now before annual meeting, as long as we finish our work tonight. So, and I believe that we have, so we were talking about passing over on those two because we didn't have exact numbers. And so or at least passing over us making a recommendation at this point. If we get information before town meeting, typically, Carolyn, but finance agrees to, we almost always have a meeting, not agrees to, we almost always have a meeting the half an hour before
Yep.
town meeting. And we could take a vote then. And so that therefore that vote can be made public at town meeting to say that FinCom has decided this at, at our last meeting, which was a half an hour ago, that, that we are now in favor or we are now opposed to X. So it doesn't have to be after your meeting, but before town meeting. I mean, we very much can act on that pretty much right up to town meeting.
Right.
Because all this is a recommendation from us. This is not
Sure, but
not
it matters.
funding. No, I know it, but what I'm saying is that it's not funding and it's not mechanisms that have to be in place and have to be printed and saying we're locked into it. This is a recommendation that we can make or we can change right up to town meeting.
But
Right.
Stan, I would also like to say, the CPA is also still relatively new. Everybody's, working out how it works. I would also be comfortable, once we have these additional bits of information, having a regular meeting. I'm sorry, I'm not speaking for the rest of the members, but so that we would have time, so we weren't doing it, the 30 minutes before town meeting, but even sometime between
That's fine.
now.
I mean, I would commit to have a meeting at the end and sometime in April.
Yeah, that would be, but just
Yeah,
in a few
I
days.
would commit to
so.
doing that.
Yep. Yep.
May I ask-
Margaret, if I might ask Margaret, when does the warrant get printed?
Oh, that's what I was just gonna say. The select board is actually voting to sign the warrant on Monday night. We expect them to do that. And then immediately after that, they'd be directing the mailing of the warrant. So it's happening fast. So this is the question that I had related to this was, does the finance committee want to keep your current recommendation on Article 24? Or do you want to rescind that and wait until before town meeting? How do you want to handle that one?
Well, I would ask the maker of the motion.
Well, we can leave it open, Margaret, and speak to it.
Right. Right,
as
because
part-
that's my only hesitation in, in
Having that
any kind
printed,
of
the
waiting
0
is
to
having
5
it
vote.
printed. Exactly.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
if we can leave it open, because I think June and Tim still have a conversation to be had about these
Yeah.
articles. So we're not done yet, and I agree with Julie that it would be good to have, not to meet half an hour before, but to set up a meeting, a week or several days ahead of annual
All
town
right.
meeting, so we can finish this.
Right.
So are
If
you
I
saying that
could,
you want to remove the recommendation from last week for now and leave it open? Or I don't know what you're,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's,
do we have to make another motion to do that, or can you just
I
take it
think
out?
so.
you have to make another motion to do that because your
was gonna-
recommendation was, you voted your
Yes.
recommendation last week. So
Yes.
you should vote to rescind that and wait
Okay.
until.
Why would we
You're gonna-
rescind it? Why would we rescind it? Why wouldn't we just wait for more information?
So that
and
it's
then
not
at
printed in
next
the
meeting
So it won't get
we would
printed.
Rescind it.
So it's not printed in the warrant as a
Right
0 to
now
5
it's-
vote.
right now it's correct. It will be printed as not approval as
Okay.
opposed to, I think we have enough things going in the mix right now that we don't want that as negative of a message, at least in my opinion.
Yeah,
yeah, I agree, Scott.
Okay, I have one other, can I just ask one more question? And this goes back to the last town meeting. The CPA money that's already been given to this lot, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, town people voted with the thought that there was going to be land sold to cover this, and now that has changed. So how does that fall into play with a vote that was done one way, but now it's changing? And I'm not sure I'm making myself clear, but a couple of people have come to me and asked this question, and I couldn't answer it, so that's why I'm asking it.
if I could answer that.
Yes, please.
I don't believe we ever promised. I know we didn't ever promise. I know I stated whenever it came up that our goal was to try to not sell a lot but that was always there was always a fallback mechanism that if we needed to, we could, but we never promised that we would. We never said that that was our goal. So anybody that heard it that way, I don't really know what to say.
From the summary below the article at the fall town meeting, it says, in part, we may need SVT to step in because as a land trust, they have certain capabilities, such as the ability to divide and sell land to help fund the purchase, which Conservation Commission does not.
Right. Unfortunately, I have to leave right now. I got caught up in this. My son's now waiting for me outside of his soccer practice, and I should have left.
Sorry.
15 minutes
So
ago.
much
Go get
trouble.
him.
Right, Scott,
Yes.
Scott, before you leave, if I could just ask if the Conservation Commission does vote to support the $50,000 for the next 2 years, then you would support the $100,000 for free
for
cash
me-
this year?
For me, yes.
Thank you.
No, Carolyn, you might want to leave that open-ended, not 2 years, because Solomon Ponds, you know, and
Well, the next 2 payments, the next, you know, we're
Well-
all crossing our fingers we get this money.
But yeah, but my point was until the sum is met, until the 100,000 is met, because it might be 3 or 4 years. That's my point.
Right,
Okay.
what if they make, what if they make
Yes,
half
a
payments, Carolyn? for
point
the
Or
next-
taken.
if you
yes.
have payment, yes, that
Yeah.
does.
Yep.
All right, so Scott, I know had to leave, but there does need to be a motion and vote on removing the 0 to 5 and just leaving it blank for now.
I move that we change our vote from March 23rd, that we rescind our vote from March 23rd on the what was then numbered article, blah, 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 is now article,
Call it the free cash conservation acquisition article.
yeah, okay, so we voted no, it was,
Actually, there was 2 of them.
yeah,
Oh,
there
we-
was-
I can tell you, it was,
Current 24 and 25.
it was Article 27 on the 23rd, it was Article 27.
exactly, it was only Article 27 that we had a do not recommend on. So that my motion is to rescind that vote on what was the March 23 Article 27 and is now enumerated Article blah, blah, blah. Let's see.
21.
Sorry, not 21.
No, it's not.
Is it
I'm sorry.
25?
It's 24, I think it's 24.
24.
I could be wrong, but
Oh, it's 23.
It's
Now our-
23?
We're over.
24 and 25 both have 0. Oh, no, I'm sorry. It's
Yeah.
24 now.
24.
Yeah, it's
Used to
24.
be- Yeah, Julie, it used to be 27, now it's 24. So my motion to rescind our vote is former Article 27, now current Article 24.
There you go.
Julie seconds, so
Julie,
that- so we can get going.
Did you second, Julie? Is that what you're saying?
Julie seconds, yeah.
Okay. So do we have further discussion on this? Okay, hearing none, roll call vote, Stan, aye.
Mary, I.
You're muted, Janet.
Janet,
Janet, I.
She's coming.
Sorry, my
She's
dog
getting
is misbehaving.
sorry.
She's getting there.
Julie, I. Okay, so Scott not present.
I thank
All
you
right, I'll
very
remove
much.
that.
Thank you, Carolyn.
And I will let you guys know the results of the Conservation Commission meeting next week. And if I could attend the FinCom meeting that you guys have when you vote on this, that would be great.
I will personally reach out to you to make sure you are.
Thank
And
you so
Carolyn,
much.
can I just make a suggestion? If you're
Yeah.
going to have more than one person here and wanting to speak, it might be a good idea to put a meeting on your agenda so that can happen, because technically, if more than, you start deliberating with more than one, it would be nice to have that open meeting law adhered to.
Sure, but that nobody else from the commission has,
Not tonight, but I'm just
It
saying.
wasn't a problem.
Further,
Yep.
further
Yep.
meetings, if they wanted to, is what I'm saying.
yep. All righty, well, if you guys don't need me anymore,
We always need you, Carolyn. You're doing a great job.
If you don't need me to remain in attendance.
That is your prerogative entirely.
Some people like to stay on. They really get sucked in.
They're
Yeah,
gluttons for punishment. Yeah.
yeah, right? Isn't it terrible?
Uh-huh.
Or
Yeah.
they don't turn off their computers.
Yeah, well, don't start down that road.
We're
All
just,
right, thank you, guys.
we're
All
just,
right.
the good part, we're just getting to the report.
Yeah.
You're gonna miss it.
Guys, I just want to let you know, what I'm going to do is I'm going to attach a draft of our previous warrant to the minutes that we already
Good idea.
approved, so that we'll have a reference for the original numbers. And then I'll attach what Margaret sent out tonight to these minutes.
Yep,
When I
That's right.
upload
Julie,
it.
did you have the use of cash sheet last time as well? That might be helpful too, because it had the articles numbered at that time.
Mhm.
Hey, Margaret,
Okay.
on that sheet, I needed to print it out to think about it. It's impossible to print. You've got controls on that Excel file. Is there any way you could take the controls off it?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Yeah, I mean, I managed to do it, but it was ugly.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no problem. I just like to make sure that all the money is put in the right buckets.
Yeah, it's extremely useful to get the view that I needed to understand the
Okay.
order.
All right, I'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you.
So the other piece that I know we had was our report that that I wrote and forwarded to everybody. Did anyone get a chance to read my glowing report that I
read your
wrote?
report,
Slaved
Stan.
on
I
all
thought it
week
was
long.
brilliant.
Yes, and please continue. Yes.
I think you have a career as a writer.
I
I
read
have a
it
career as
too.
something. I have a career as something. That's for gosh darn sure.
You mean Wendy didn't help you write that, Stan?
Well, she was busy with her new puppy. She had no time to help me with my report. So I had to have a ghostwriter. So do we have any, it was a great report, if I do say so myself. And does anyone have anything that they think we need to add to it? I think it's fabulous.
Stan, the one thing going down this, I just plucked certain things that I thought might be interesting, like little assessors things. Hey, we got to do that. But I don't know if I missed any little nuggets that we might want to tell people or that might not be clear. And I was trying to think about where they're going to see, like, a taxpayer looking through and saying, oh, this particular budget went up 22%. So I was trying to get a few of those line items, but I don't know if there were others that we would want to put in here. That's the only discussion point that I got for us now.
Well, I mean, I think you hit on the ones that we had, a fair amount of discussion around. I mean, there might be some other ones that were percentages, but I think that it was kind of like those, maybe committee, what was the survey, whatever the group that recommended salary changes. What was that? What is it? Well, not personnel, but what was the
HR consultant.
The consultants, or they had so they had the recommendations from them to make those changes.
Yeah.
We discussed them in our meetings. They're in there. I mean, we can talk to it if anyone wants to discuss it when we present the budget, but I think you hit on all the ones that we had lengthy, spirited discussions about. I don't think we need to add any.
Oh, okay. And then the first paragraph, Stan, the 2% COLAs in there, and appropriate market adjustments for relevant positions.
Right.
Applying to town employee compensation.
Yep.
I think it's in there.
It is. Yep. No, I think it's great. The only thing, I wasn't sure what that bar under stabilization fund was. I didn't quite know what that was. Is that a chart, or was that
I took it from last year. I don't know what
okay.
it was from June, what we put in there or something. I don't know.
I don't either.
just take it out, or I can take it out and resend.
I think it just adds to it. Adds a little aura of mystery. That's a little discussion point there.
And delete it.
You had to be there to understand it.
I don't think people want mysteries from FinCom.
Well, that's probably true. But you got to break it up a little bit. You don't want it to be too. You don't want it to be just too dry either. You gotta.
Would you like a row of smiley faces and I take the table out?
No, I like it. I'm telling you, I like it.
Oh, look at that dog. Oh,
Aw.
Hey,
I'm
cutie.
getting tired.
and
She was our,
Margaret,
she was our princess. That was her name, Princess.
Aw.
She was a love.
oh,
Anyway, that's my doggy background.
Well, I can't even show you a picture of our puppy because he's black and you won't even see
Oh,
it.
blend in with your black background.
I know, right? Yeah, but he's going to be a service dog. We're volunteering as puppy raisers for a service
Nice.
dog.
oh, that's cool. That's really cool. So Stan, are you taking the table out that's empty, or am I going to take it out?
I don't think we should leave it.
I can't even see
like
the
it.
table. All it is a bunch of grids.
Yeah,
That's
that's what
it
I'm
is.
saying. I like it.
It's
Yeah, it's set
invisible numbers, so.
Yeah, it gives it
Oh,
a
so
little-
there's really no numbers there. Oh my
Yeah,
God,
gives
that
it
went right over
pizzazz.
my head. I'm sorry.
Yeah, gives it pizzazz.
It was just like last year's. That's
Yeah, exactly. That's what they expect from us.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Every good finance chair puts one of those in their report. Everyone should know that.
just in case you have numbers to put in it. It's there.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's a placeholder. All right, so we need a motion to accept this unless anyone wants further discussion on
I'll
it.
make a motion to accept the report.
Second,
Thank you, Julie.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, roll call vote, Stan, aye.
Mary, I.
Jan and I.
Julie, aye.
So Margaret, who do I forward this to?
To Mary Arata, selectmen@townofberlin.com.
Okay,
Thank you.
yep. What else we got?
Is there anything else on the warrant?
June, FinCom voted the adjusted school assessment numbers, right? You did that
Yeah.
already? Oh, so you're all set.
They did it before. Yep.
Yep.
So all right, before your next meeting, then I am going, in fact, I have to do this quickly. I have to prepare the FinCom's recommended budget. That has to go out with the warrant. So I'll work on that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you want us to proofread or anything, Margaret? Do you want to?
I can send it out. I can send it out to everybody. Yeah.
I mean, I trust you. It's just a question. Do you?
We'll
want
have to finalize the revenue end of it too.
Yes, we will. Yeah.
Hey, if it makes anybody feel better, I'm looking at the item article on the Neshoba School District. Their budgets went out to the towns with a 5.25% increase.
We did okay.
Lancaster had a 5.39%, Stowe 2.64,
Mhm.
Bolton 3.9. So I don't know if that makes anybody feel better, but it seems to be a trend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next year, I'm really dreading this.
Yep, I'm with you, Janet. I don't think it's
Because
gonna be
I
pretty.
know that there's a huge influx. So anyways, before we do any more, do we need to pick another meeting date or should we just put one out there? I know that we
Yeah, I
talked
think
about it.
I think we should put one out there because we can always
Yeah.
cancel it.
Yeah,
Why don't we say, well, should we say like the third week in April? Second or third week?
How about the third week? Because by that point, we should have all the information that we need from the CPA and conservation. That will give them time. Does that sound fair?
so is that the 20th?
Yeah, Wednesday the 20th, 7:30 at night.
Yep.
Well, conservation meets that night too, so
Oh, okay, so maybe the 13th or the 27th then?
How about the 27th?
The 27th, okay.
And that's the night before the
Town
coffee
meeting.
talk, right?
Coffee Talk is on the 21st.
Oh, okay, so coffee talk is gonna be before the
Yep.
finance committee's meeting, okay. All right, so that's the 20. Oh, see, I had already booked you for Zoom. All right, so on My Town Government, your agenda will include, obviously, minutes. And Carolyn wants to attend. I don't know if that's gonna be an agenda item or not, Stan. I can talk with you about that later.
Okay,
But we have time to put that on the agenda, right?
Yes,
It's like 48 hours.
Mhm.
But the agenda items are the CPA and conservation warrant articles.
yeah. Okay,
yeah, and I think that's broad, that's even broad enough, I think, to include.
Just for fun, could we throw something in there in case we need to do a transfer, a reserve fund transfer or anything like that?
It does
Just
sound
in
like
case.
fun, June, you're right.
June
Yeah, 'cause
special request.
I don't want you to get too bored.
Sounds
Okay.
even better than a trip to the amusement park.
Oh, Stan, I think you're pushing it now.
Can you tell it's getting late, June?
I was gonna say it's gotta be after 9.
Can you
It
tell we're at
is.
the end of the budget cycle, June?
Oh,
Can you
made
tell I
it.
didn't push for the April 12th meeting or whatever that one, the second week was, June?
The
I
13th.
know, Stan.
Yeah,
All right.
You're holding up well, Stan. It's good.
He is. He's doing wonderful. And he didn't
Yeah,
fall
you'll know.
asleep.
you'll notice, yeah, well, you notice I got the video off because
Yeah,
I'm
we
almost
know.
correct. I'm almost 90, I'm almost at 90 degrees, almost 180.
As long as you don't fall over.
No,
Okay. Yay.
Yeah.
Guys.
okay,
Janet, it's your motion time.
Oh, motion
Yes.
to adjourn.
thank you.
At 9:19, thank you.